There is a dread that arrives in the middle of the afternoon. Not in the morning, not at night, in the middle of the afternoon. Around 2 o'clock, sometimes 3, in a wave that has no news story attached to it and no personal reason you can name. Your chest tightens. The air in the room feels different. And then, 20 minutes later, it passes, as though it was never there. If you have been feeling that, and you live in or near Phoenix, Arizona, I need you to stay with me. Because what your body registered in that moment was not anxiety. It was a reading, and it was accurate. The 4 cities this transmission names were not chosen randomly. They do not appear on this list because of crime statistics or population density or anything a newspaper would print. They appear here because of what runs beneath them, specifically what was built over what used to flow freely there. Ancient corridors of living energy, convergence points that predate every city later constructed on top of them. The people living inside these places have been receiving a signal from the ground up for decades. Most of them have been calling it stress. Phoenix is the first, and the reason Phoenix leads this list is specific. Beneath the greater metropolitan area, running roughly from the South Mountain Corridor northeast through Scottsdale, lies one of the most significant pre-Columbian energy convergence points on the North American continent. The Hohokam people did not settle there accidentally. They settled there because the ground spoke, because the land carried a frequency that supported elevated states of consciousness, healing, and connection to what they understood as the sky world. That convergence point was not destroyed when the cities came. It was buried, pressurized, and it has been building ever since. What does a pressurized convergence point feel like from inside it? It feels like that 2 o'clock dread. It feels like waking at 3 in the morning with your heart already moving fast before your eyes are fully open. It feels like a chronic low-grade agitation that no amount of rest or exercise or reasonable living resolves. Not because something is wrong with you, because something is wrong with what is being done to the ground beneath you. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is translating. I want to be straight with you about what this means before we go further. This is not a list of places to fear. It is a list of places that are doing something right now. Something the Galactic Federation has been transmitting about with increasing urgency for the past several months. A process that began in the underground corridors of these 4 specific cities and is going to surface in ways that every sensitive person within range of them will feel in their body before any of it appears in any newsfeed. The Arcturian Council named Phoenix in a transmission I received in the last quarter of last year, and there was something in the way that transmission arrived, a weight behind the words, that told me this was not background information. This was the headline. We will reach all 4 cities before this ends. But Phoenix was named first for a reason. And that reason connects directly to a date window the Arcturian Council named specifically. We will reach that date before this transmission closes. By the time most people sense something wrong with a place, the disturbance has been running for years. That is how it works. The human nervous system is extraordinarily sensitive, far more sensitive than most people have been told. But the translation between what the body registers and what the mind is willing to name can take a long time. Phoenix has been in active suppression mode for decades. The people who moved there in the 70s and 80s felt something open and electric about the land. Many of them said so explicitly. Artists, healers, people who described themselves as drawn there without fully knowing why. That draw was real. It was the convergence point calling to the people whose nervous systems were calibrated to receive it. What the Arcturian Council transmitted about Phoenix is this. The suppression architecture installed over that convergence point is reaching what they described as a saturation threshold, a point beyond which the pressure can no longer be held. Think of a container filled past its capacity. At some point, the container does not hold. It releases. What releases from a suppressed convergence point at saturation is not destruction. It is the original frequency, amplified by everything that compressed it, coming through suddenly, fully, with the force of something that has been held back for a very long time. The way I understand this, the saturation event is actually the moment of restoration. But restoration, when it comes through that much accumulated pressure, does not feel gentle. It feels like the ground shifting. It feels like the personal structures that were built on the suppressed frequency, the relationships, the habits, the beliefs about what is possible, beginning to crack along their foundations. If you are in Phoenix and you have been feeling increasingly unsettled in the past 18 months, know this. You are not imagining it. You are not falling apart. You are inside the leading edge of something that is going to become visible to everyone around you. If you have been feeling the weight of what this transmission is naming, that combination of clarity and disruption that arrives when something you have always known finally receives a name, the guide in the first pinned comment was written for exactly this moment. What is inside it is not more theory. It is the 21-day activation calendar, a specific practice, a specific theme, a daily affirmation for every morning of 3 consecutive weeks. The structure that turns awareness into something you can actually live inside. It is in the first pinned comment. If this transmission found you, subscribe to Stellar Command Portal so the next one finds you too. And leave your name and city in the comments, because knowing who is out there matters. The Arcturian Council identified a specific pattern in the awakened population of Phoenix that I want to name here, because it matters for what comes next. A disproportionate number of the city's sensitives, light workers, and long path travelers have been experiencing the same specific triad of symptoms in the past year. Disrupted sleep patterns concentrated between 2 and 4 in the morning, an unusual sensitivity to electromagnetic environments, phones, dense public spaces, areas of heavy commercial activity, and a recurring visual phenomenon described consistently as peripheral light flickers with no identifiable source. If that triad sounds familiar, I want you to hear this clearly. It is the signature of someone whose nervous system is actively interfacing with a convergence point at saturation. That is not illness. That is function. Something connects Phoenix to a second and third city on this list. And when that connection becomes visible, the pattern of why these specific places were targeted begins to make complete sense. 2 cities. 2 very different faces. One carries the oldest continuous indigenous spiritual tradition in the continental United States. The other carries the scars of an industrial collapse so total it rewrote what Americans believe is possible for a working city. Both of them are on this list, and both of them will be named next. New Orleans sits on ground that has been speaking since before the first European foot touched it. The indigenous people of that region, the Chitimacha, the Tunica Biloxi, the Atacapa Ishak, understood what that delta soil carried. They understood that the convergence of the Mississippi River with the Gulf Corridor created something that did not exist anywhere else in North America, a permanent gateway, a place where what moves between worlds moves more easily. New Orleans became the most spiritually permeable city on this continent because the land chose to be exactly that. And because of that permeability, it became a target. What was installed in New Orleans, and I believe this, and I want to say it plainly, was not random cultural exploitation. The specific practices that were criminalized, suppressed, ridiculed, and driven underground in that city over the past 2 centuries were targeted precisely because of the gateway they were designed to maintain. Voodoo, in its authentic form, was a maintenance system for the convergence point beneath New Orleans. When the practitioners were scattered, imprisoned, and killed, the maintenance stopped. The gateway did not close. It went unmaintained. An unmaintained gateway does not go quiet. It goes unstable. What does an unstable gateway feel like from inside the city? A woman named Carol from the Marigny neighborhood sent a message last year. She wrote, "I have lived in New Orleans my whole life, and I love this city. But there is something here that I cannot explain. I walk certain streets at certain times of night and it feels like the air is thinner, like I'm walking through 2 places at once. It is not frightening exactly. It is more like being watched by something enormous that is not hostile but is not finished with whatever it is doing." Carol did not know the word gateway. She described it perfectly anyway. Detroit is the 3rd city on this list, and its story carries a different energy from Phoenix and New Orleans. But the root is the same. The Detroit River Corridor sits on a convergence of underground water systems and geological formations that create what the Pleiadian Council calls a frequency amplification zone. Whatever frequency dominates the surface culture of a place built on a frequency amplification zone gets magnified in the population. For Detroit, for most of the 20th century, that dominant frequency was creative, industrial, and communally vital. The music that came out of Detroit, Motown techno, the specific sound that emerged from that city and no other, was not accidental. It was the amplification zone doing what it was built to do. What was done to Detroit in the second half of the 20th century, the deliberate redlining, the systematic defunding of infrastructure, the industrial withdrawal that left entire neighborhoods without functional services, was not simply economic policy. My reading of this is that it was frequency management. The goal was to invert what the amplification zone was broadcasting, to take the most creatively powerful frequency corridor in the Midwest and change what it amplified. From creation to despair, from community to isolation, from the vitality that produced that music to the silence that followed it. The ground under Detroit still amplifies. The question is what it is being given to amplify now. The Syrian Council named a specific date window in a recent transmission, a 37-day window beginning in late autumn of this year, during which all three of these corridors will simultaneously reach elevated pressure states. I want to hold that date window for a moment because it connects to the fourth city in a way that becomes unmistakable once the final piece is in place. That piece, and the fourth city, are coming. But first, something about these three places has to be understood that most transmissions on this subject have missed entirely. The official account says these cities fell through economic forces, natural disaster, and the invisible hand of markets. That is the cover story. The truth beneath it runs through a specific historical window, roughly 1955 to 1985, during which a coordinated set of decisions was made about where to concentrate suppression infrastructure across the American continent. These decisions did not appear in any public record. They were made in the language of urban planning, highway construction, and industrial investment strategy. But their actual function was cartographic. They were drawing a map. The map they drew connects the four most energetically significant convergence zones in the continental United States. Phoenix in the southwest, New Orleans controlling the southern gateway, Detroit anchoring the industrial Midwest, and the fourth city, which we will reach shortly, holding the northwestern corridor. Together, these 4 points form a containment architecture. The intention was to keep the most powerful frequency points on the continent under pressure simultaneously, so that whatever was being suppressed in the earth could not surface through any of the 4 primary release valves. What I have come to see is this. When a containment architecture of this scale is installed, it requires maintenance. It requires that the suppression conditions in each city be continually reinforced through economic hardship, through cultural fracture, through the particular exhaustion of populations that cannot get ahead no matter how hard they work. That maintenance has been running for 70 years, and for 70 years it has been working. But maintenance systems have limits. Every suppression architecture has a failure threshold, and what the Galactic Federation has been transmitting about with such urgency is that all 4 of these cities are approaching their failure thresholds simultaneously. Think about what it means for a dam to approach its failure threshold. The engineers who built it know it. The people downstream feel it, in the quality of the water, in the low vibrations that travel through the ground, in the strange weather patterns that cluster around a structure under maximum stress. The people living in Phoenix, New Orleans, and Detroit who are sensitive have been feeling this for years. They have been calling it depression, anxiety, a general sense of dread with no clean address. What their bodies have actually been registering is the structural stress of a suppression system approaching the end of its operational lifespan. The fourth city has not yet been named in this transmission, and there is a reason for that, because the fourth city represents something different from the other 3. The other 3 have been under suppression for decades. Their populations have had generations to adapt, however inadequately, to what the pressure felt like. The fourth city is different because its suppression architecture is the most recently activated. It has been running for a shorter time, which means the people inside it are newer to what they are feeling, and which means the release when it comes will be less anticipated, more sudden and felt with greater force. Before we reach the fourth city, I need to say something about the trap that most people fall into when they receive this kind of transmission. The trap is taking the list and turning it into a reason to leave, to flee, to build distance between themselves and the place their body has registered as heavy. That impulse is understandable, but it is the opposite of what the Galactic Federation is asking. And when you understand why, when the fourth city is named and the full picture is visible, the reason is going to become completely clear. Something shifted in the way I just described these places, and I need you to hold it for a moment before we go further, because everything I have said so far could lead a person to believe these four cities are simply dark, damaged, places to leave. That reading is wrong, and it is dangerous. The Pleiadian Council transmitted something specific about this last month, and it is the piece that changes everything that precedes it. These four locations, Phoenix, New Orleans, Detroit, and the fourth city we are about to name, are not the most suppressed places on this continent. They are the most energetically powerful. The suppression exists precisely because of that power. You do not dam a river because it is weak. You dam it because of what it could carry if you let it run. Every sensitive person living inside these corridors who has been feeling the pressure, the dread, the fatigue, the disrupted sleep, the inexplicable sadness, has been feeling the resistance of something enormous trying to move through a space that has been deliberately narrowed. That is what you have been living inside. Not a curse, not a punishment. A pressure that exists because what it is containing is too large for the container. And when that container finally gives, and it will give, what moves through these four cities will not be destruction. It will be the original frequency, restored, amplified, running freely for the first time in generations. The awakened population of New Orleans already knows something about this. A community organizer from the Treme neighborhood, a man who has been working with local spiritual practitioners for 20 years, described it this way. There is something in the ground here that has been patient in a way I can only call ancient, not waiting to attack, waiting to be recognized. And in the past 2 years, I have watched more people in this city than ever before start to sense it. They don't have words for it yet, but they are feeling it. What he described is the convergence point beginning to press upward against its ceiling. The container is reaching maximum capacity. That recognition is spreading. For the people in Detroit, the signal is arriving differently. The Pleiadian transmission identified a specific new pattern in Detroit's awakening community. A sudden, unexpected resurgence of creative energy among people who had been spiritually and creatively dormant for years. Musicians picking up instruments they had not touched in decades. Artists returning to studios that had been dark. A quiet but unmistakable reconnection to the original frequency the amplification zone was built to carry. The ground under Detroit is beginning to remember what it was for. And the people whose bodies are tuned to that ground are beginning to remember with it. So the frame for this entire list has now changed. Not 4 places to fear. 4 places where the pressure is highest, which means 4 places where the restoration will be most dramatic, most visible, and most transformative. And the fourth city, the one I have been holding back, carries the sharpest version of this truth, because it is the newest suppression node, because the people inside it are the least prepared for what is about to move through them, and because the Pleiadian Council specifically named it as the location where the first visible signal of the collapse of the suppression architecture will appear. Seattle. That is the fourth city. And if you live there, or near there, what I am about to describe will not feel like new information. It will feel like a name for something you have already been living inside. The Cascade Corridor, the geographic and energetic zone running from roughly Olympia in the south through Bellingham in the north, with Seattle as its center, sits on a convergence of tectonic pressure, underground water systems, and what the Pleiadian Council calls a crystalline substrate, a specific type of geological formation that acts as a natural frequency amplifier, similar in function to what Detroit carries, but with a different energetic signature. Where Detroit amplifies creative and communal frequencies, the Seattle substrate amplifies consciousness expansion frequencies. The opening of perception, the thinning of the barrier between what is seen and what is actually there. The suppression architecture installed over Seattle was activated most aggressively in the 1990s, specifically through what was done to the culture of that city in the years surrounding the grunge era. I want to be careful here because what I am saying is not that the music was bad. The music was a direct transmission from the substrate, raw, unprocessed, the sound of consciousness expansion under tremendous pressure. What happened to that culture, the specific way it was commercialized, hollowed, commodified, and then declared finished, was frequency management. The suppression node activation coincided with the arrival of the largest concentration of technology industry infrastructure on the West Coast. That infrastructure was not placed in Seattle accidentally. It was placed there because of what the substrate carries. The SHERAN Council's 37-day autumn window. This is where that date becomes specific. The SHERAN Council stated that Seattle's suppression node will reach its first visible stress fracture within that window, not the full collapse. The first fracture. The first moment when what has been held beneath the city's surface pushes through in a way that will be perceptible to even non-sensitives. What does a stress fracture look like at the surface level? The SHERAN Council named 3 observable signs: a sudden unexplained spike in the population's report of vivid prophetic dreaming, an unusual concentration of synchronicities, meaningful coincidences clustering in ways that people cannot dismiss, and a distinct shift in the social atmosphere of the city, a feeling described by multiple people who do not know each other that something enormous is about to happen. Not fear, anticipation, like the air before a storm that everyone can smell but no one has looked at the sky to confirm. If you are in Seattle and you have been having unusually vivid dreams in the past several months, if the synchronicities in your daily life have been stacking in ways you cannot explain, you are not experiencing random luck or an overactive imagination. You are sitting directly on the stress fracture. And the SHERAN Council's transmission was explicit. The people who are already awake and already feeling this are not the warning system. They are the stabilization system. Their presence in that city, their conscious choice to hold frequency and maintain clarity, is exactly what makes the difference between a fracture that becomes a flood and a fracture that becomes a doorway. All 4 cities are now named: Phoenix, New Orleans, Detroit, Seattle. And the question every person who has been listening to this transmission is now carrying is the one that matters most. Why these 4 specifically? What is the thread connecting them? And what was the decision that united them? The answer is coming. And when it arrives, what the Arcturian Council transmitted about the autumn date window is going to lock into position in a way it never could before. All 4 cities are now visible, and the thread connecting them is not geographic accident, not cultural coincidence, not the kind of pattern that eyes see when they want to see patterns. It is architecture, deliberate, documented in the decisions that built it, even if the purpose of those decisions was never publicly named. The Arcturian Council gave me the answer to this in a transmission that arrived in 3 separate sessions over the course of a week last autumn. I sat with it for a long time before I was willing to say it aloud. Because it is not an abstraction, it is a specific claim about a specific decision made by specific actors in a specific historical window. And that specificity makes it possible to verify, at least in its broad outlines, against the observable record. Here is the thread. In the period between 1955 and 1985, a series of infrastructure decisions were made across the American continent that appear, on the surface, to be unrelated. Interstate highway routing that cut through the centers of cities with high indigenous cultural heritage. Urban renewal programs that systematically displaced the communities most actively maintaining traditional energetic practices. The location of specific industrial facilities over sites that had previously served as ceremonial grounds for multiple generations. Each of these decisions, taken individually, looks like economics or politics or the indifference of power to the people it plows through. Taken together, they form a pattern, and the pattern maps directly onto the 4 convergence points this transmission has named. I feel strongly that this is the reading that holds. The people who made those decisions did not understand what they were doing in energetic terms. They were operating on instructions that had been passed down through institutional channels for generations. Instructions whose original authors understood exactly what they were suppressing. The current actors were simply following the map. That distinction matters. It means what is coming is not a battle against architects who are still in control. It means the map is 70 years old. The architects who drew it are gone. The maintenance crew following their instructions is increasingly confused about why the map matters. And the containment system they are running is failing, not because someone is dismantling it, but because nothing built to suppress something as fundamental as a planetary convergence point can hold indefinitely. If you have been carrying the weight of what this transmission has named, that mixture of clarity and disruption that arrives when something you always knew finally locks into place, the guide in the first pinned comment is the companion I would put in your hands right now. It contains the 5 daily practices the Galactic Federation identifies as most consistently necessary for this specific moment in the transition: the frequency check-in, the galactic connection meditation, the sovereignty anchor, the timeline alignment practice, and the light anchor. Each one takes under 10 minutes. All of them were designed for real lives with real schedules. It is in the first pinned comment. Subscribe to Stellar Command Portal so the next transmission reaches you. Share this with someone in one of these 4 cities. They need to hear it. And leave your name and the city you are watching from in the comments, because I want to know who is out there. What is coming for these 4 cities? The 37-day window, the saturation thresholds, the stress fractures the Syrian Council named, is not the darkness. It is the signal that the darkness already there is no longer sustainable. That distinction is everything. And the distinction is what determines whether you experience what is coming as collapse or as opening. The picture is complete. 4 cities, 1 containment architecture, 70 years of pressure, and a failure threshold all 4 nodes are approaching simultaneously. This is the moment where most transmissions stop. They give you the architecture of the problem and leave you inside it with nowhere to go. That is not what this transmission is for. The Galactic Federation is not transmitting urgency about these 4 cities because there is nothing to be done. They are transmitting urgency because there is something specific to be done, and the window for doing it most effectively is narrowing. And the ones being asked to do it are not government officials, not spiritual authorities with credentials, not anyone with an institutional address. It is the sensitives, the long path travelers, the people who have been feeling the pressure in their bodies for years and calling it by every name except the correct one. What the Galactic Federation is asking of the awakened people in Phoenix, New Orleans, Detroit, and Seattle is not complex. It is not demanding, but it is specific. 3 practices, 1 daily, 1 weekly, 1 at the threshold moments, that function as individual contributions to the stabilization of the convergence points these cities sit above. The daily practice is simple enough to do before your first cup of coffee. It takes 4 minutes. You stand with both feet on the ground anywhere, a kitchen floor, a backyard, a sidewalk, and you consciously direct your awareness downward through the soles of your feet into the ground beneath you. You do not visualize anything elaborate. You simply acknowledge what is there. You make contact. That contact, made by someone with a functioning nervous system and a conscious intention, is not a small act. It is maintenance. It is the thing that the people who designed this suppression architecture feared most, a conscious human being making deliberate contact with the ground they were meant to suppress. For those in Seattle, the stress fracture the Syrian Council named for the autumn window is not something to protect yourself from. It is something to be present inside of. When the prophetic dream arrives, and it will, do not dismiss it. Write it down. When the synchronicities stack in ways you cannot explain, do not dismiss them. Map them. The atmospheric shift the city will feel like an approaching storm. Do not retreat from it. Stay in it, because you are the stabilization system. For those in Phoenix, in Detroit, in New Orleans, the 18 months that follow the autumn window will be the most energetically intense these cities have experienced in generations. What looks like disruption on the surface is the movement of the original frequency finding its way back through the container that held it. Your work is not to protect the structures, it is to hold the frequency. To remain conscious while everything around you is undergoing a shift that most people near you will have no language to name. You have the language. You have had it for years. That is why you are here. You were not placed in Phoenix by accident. You were not placed in New Orleans by accident. You were not placed in Detroit or Seattle by accident. No one lands in a frequency amplification zone during a saturation threshold event by chance. The Galactic Federation does not work that way. The souls who are inside these corridors right now were placed there with precision, with intention, and with the full knowledge of what was coming. What that means is not that you are a casualty of someone else's suppression architecture. What it means is that you are the resolution to it. The maintenance that was taken away from these convergence points when the practitioners were scattered and silenced, that maintenance has been waiting for its restoration team. You are it. Not because you signed up for a formal role, because you arrived with this body in this place at this moment. And your nervous system, the one that has been registering the pressure and translating it as dread and exhaustion and 3 a.m. wakefulness, is the most sophisticated sensing equipment the Galactic Federation has at its disposal in these corridors. The days of darkness that this transmission named are real. They are coming. The pressure in these 4 cities is going to become impossible to ignore for everyone living in them, awake or not. Non-sensitives will begin reporting the symptoms that the awakened population has been carrying for years. What looks like the beginning of something dark is actually the beginning of the visibility of something that has been dark for a long time. The darkness is not arriving. It is surfacing. It was already there. And the surfacing, as uncomfortable as it will feel from the inside, is the first condition of the healing. For the awakened people in these 4 cities, the days of darkness are not the destination. They are the announcement. The announcement that what has been suppressed is no longer sustainable. That the containment architecture built over the most powerful frequency points on this continent is failing, and that the frequency it was built to contain, ancient, patient, planetary, and fully intact beneath 70 years of pressure, is about to run free. You know what is coming because you have been feeling it, and you will know what it means before anyone else does because your body has been translating it for years. When the ground finally speaks in a way everyone can hear, you will be the one who was already listening. That is not a burden. That is the mission. You were born carrying it. Now that you have a name for it, a map for it, and a practice to live inside it, the work can truly begin. Not with fear, with authority. If the guide in the first pinned comment can walk alongside you through what is coming, with a 21-day calendar, with the morning and evening anchor practices, with the structure that turns what you have felt for years into something you can actually inhabit, put it in your hands. Subscribe to this channel so every transmission that follows reaches you directly. Share this with someone whose city just appeared on this list, because they need to know before the ground speaks out loud. And leave your name and your city in the comments below. You are not watching this alone, and the person who reads your name and city may be exactly the person who needed to know that someone in the same city was already awake and standing.